I'm Ashley Charleston. I'm the Town Environmental Planner. Thank you for joining us this evening for our August Sustainable Brunswick lecture, where we have a few folks from Trout Unlimited who have joined us here today to teach you a bit about brook trout biology, especially as it pertains to here in Mare Brook, what's kind of going on with the status of the brook, and a whole bunch of other fun info that I don't want to spoil. But really quickly before we get started, if I could please ask folks to silence your phones. We have our lovely TV3 guru, Jim Nealon from the town recording. So just keep in mind, if you can, try and hold Q&A questions for the end, because we like to run a microphone to make sure that we can pick up the audio, because this is going to be recorded and available for future viewing on demand. So with that, I guess the only last item is bathrooms and water are around the corner. Feel free to leave as needed. And I'll let Jeff Bush, our first speaker, take it away.
Thank you. Yay. Thank you very much for showing up tonight on a fine August evening here in Brunswick. My name is Jeff Bush. I am the former president of the local Trout Unlimited chapter, the Mary Meeting Bay chapter. I did such a great job with that. They kicked me upstairs, and now I'm working at the council level at Maine Council. There are 6 chapters of TU in Maine, and I will be herding those cats starting in January. I'd like to introduce a few other people I'll be working with tonight, and that you will be working with as well. Jean McKenna is a co-presenter here. Jean is a longtime TU member, getting a start in the Guadalupe chapter in Texas back in the 70s. We also have Nate Hicks over here, and Nate Hicks will be helping out with the entomology display. More about that to come. But we're hoping to have a very interactive session tonight. There is a lot of information I would like to impart to you, so I would just remind you of Ashley's admonishment to keep your questions to the end. We will, I'll show you the agenda very shortly, and we'll talk about how all that will happen. But thank you once again for coming, and we look forward to a very pleasant evening together. Many of you may have gotten the pun that Ashley used to publicize this event tonight. It's a direct lift from Rachel Carson's seminal piece of work, Silent Spring, in which she asks this question: how can intelligent beings seek to control a few unwanted species by a method that contaminated the entire environment and brought the threat of disease and death even to their own kind? We'll be exploring that question tonight and others. So let me run down the agenda for you here. We start with an appreciation, general appreciation for brook trout, which is the native fish for this area, native cold water fish for this area. And we'll target how the brook trout are doing here in this town. The fact that we are actually having a small or 2 small populations of brook trout is really something that we would like you to treasure, because we find it exceedingly rare and special that we have these populations. What it really means is that our trout streams, our streams, Mare Brook in particular, are healthy enough to support this. Just barely, and we're going to be getting into just that, talking about just how barely they are able to survive in Mare Brook. Open it up a little bit to talk about what's cold water stream ecology looks like, and the critical role of macroinvertebrates. Macroinvertebrates, for those of you who do not know, are simply insects that live in the water. Macro meaning it's large enough to see with my human eye. Invertebrate meaning it does not have a backbone, so there are terrestrial macroinvertebrates and there are aquatic macroinvertebrates. Aquatic macroinvertebrates are going to be the subject of our workshop back there in the back of the table, if you've had a chance to poke around there. Also, we have the eye candy over here to my right, your left. We procured from the hatchery those young brook trout. They are just a few weeks old, and they still have their par marks on them, but they're here for your educational purposes. Macroinvertebrates are a great indicator of water quality, and we'll be connecting the macroinvertebrates that we see to the health of the streams directly through the use of a guide that Maine Audubon has put together that will allow you to identify the insect, go to another piece of another page in the key, and learn more about that particular insect. I'm going to have to tie my hands behind my back. Finally, we will talk about the stressors that the Mayor Brook presents to the native population of the brook trout, and hone in specifically on our pesticide use. And we will close out the evening with a general discussion about alternatives to the typical chemical pesticides that are so prevalent in our world. Any questions about the agenda? Great. Now a word from our sponsor, Trout Unlimited. How many people are aware of Trout Unlimited? Everybody in this room. That's fantastic, and thank you very much. We really deeply appreciate that. So Trout Unlimited's mission statement is just maybe a couple years old now. We bring people together across the country to care for our rivers and help make our water cleaner and our communities healthier. What might be striking to you is it says nothing about fishing. It says nothing about angling, fly fishing in particular. It says we are a conservation organization that's committed to improving our waterways. If you don't fish, that's fine. We want you. We particularly want you if you're not 70-year-old white male. But to tell us a little bit more about Trout Unlimited, I'd like to invite my friend Gene McKenna up to talk a little bit about two things: the origin of Trout Unlimited, but most importantly, what we're doing as a chapter to help our local streams and water resources. I see you brought some notes.
I did. Just kidding. I thought I'd lighten things up. My name is Gene McKenna. I'm a member of the Curtis Memorial Library, and I live in Bowdenham with my lovely wife Jane. And I joined Trout Unlimited 53 years ago, so I have some background with the organization. Trout Unlimited, which is colloquially known as TU, was founded in 1959 in Grayling, Michigan, on the Au River, which I had a chance to fish this spring. George Griffith, a Detroit executive, and George Mason, the president of Nash, Rambler, and Kelvinator Corporation, which made stoves and refrigerators back in the day, they had camps on the Au and the Sable had run the same gauntlet as Maine has. Loggers cut every pine tree that they get their hands on in the Grayling area. The Au native fish were grayling, which are related to trout and salmon. And between the clear-cutting efforts, the log drives down the river, they ruined it. And also overfishing went into play. When they channelized and took away the overhead cover, the trout didn't have any place to hide. So George in 1959 said, hey, we think that we can restore the Au Sable River back to its former glory. And what would it be, 50 years later, 45 years later, this April, we saw the structures that the members of Trout Unlimited in Grayling built in the river, places for the fish to hide, made out of wood, logs, and stones, rocks. much like the Maine ice and logging industry did in the Kennebec. If you go up towards Augusta, you see the stanchions that they made in the river to guide the logs where they wanted them to go. Well, TU did the same thing in Grayling to give the fish a place to hide. So if there are any literary folks here, I read a book called Barkskins, which was written by E. Annie Proulx, who won the Pulitzer Prize for shipping news about Newfoundland. It's 800 pages long. That's the bad news, but it chronicles Native Americans and French-Canadian loggers through many generations, from when they were cutting trees in the maritime provinces, cutting trees in Maine, and then they moved to Michigan. So it gives a very good history of what went on in the logging back in the day. When I joined TU in 1972, when I got back from Vietnam on the Guadalupe River in Texas, we were driving into the state in an ice storm. They didn't have any snow plows or any salt spreading machines. So we had to hole up in a motel that night. And we got the last room because everybody on the highway had to get off because they couldn't deal with the icing conditions. So, long story short, I joined the TU chapter in just above San Antonio, and they were working on the Guadalupe River, which had a trout fishery, which was my surprise. I didn't think Texas had any kind of trout, but they had limestone gorges that the river ran through, and they had an accidental stocking. A truck full of rainbow trout broke down on the bridge, so they dumped them in the river. And right now, the Guadalupe chapter has 5,000 members, and the trout are still there. So it's a wonderful thing. Back then, TU had 20,000 members, and we had to check the mail every week before we sent out checks. We had a very tight budget. Now, Trout Unlimited has 300,000 members and $50 million budget and 350 employees. I read about that this morning. Welcome. It's come a long way, and I'm pleased that I may have made a small contribution. Now we come to Maine. As Jeff mentioned, we have 6 chapters here in Maine. We have a Maine Council. Some of the things that TU has accomplished in the state. In 1999, the Edwards Dam on the Kennebec River was taken out. It was a major news covered by all the national broadcast entities. TU and the Atlantic Salmon Federation played a major role in that. I wanted to thank Jane Cleaves McKenna, who worked, she was the U.S. director for ASF in those days, and she played a part. So, Jane, congratulations. The TU Council in the state runs a trout camp for teenagers every year in Solon on the Kennebec. They get to spend a week in cabins on the Kennebec. They walk away with all their fishing equipment, rod, reel, line, etc., all the flies that they can carry, and we even offer scholarships. So if you know a teenager that might be interested, they have to like to fish and they have to like to do conservation work. So what else have we done? I'm going to have to put on my glasses. And please don't ask me any questions. Both of my hearing aids, the batteries are dead on them, so I won't be able to hear your questions. Frost Gully, thank you. 2 years ago, our chapter took out 3 dams on Frost Gully Brook, which is a sea-run brook trout stream in Freeport. Flows under Route 1, not far from L.L. Bean's headquarters, the flagship store. It was a major undertaking. It flushed all the sand and silt and mud that was stacked up behind the 3 dams, and washed it out into Casco Bay. Nate Hicks is our resident macrobiologist. He enlisted the volunteers from the community, and we found all kinds of mayflies, caddisflies, and stoneflies that the trout eat. It's a wonderful habitat, thanks to the work of TU to take those dams out. We're also, at the council level, working on taking out the 3 lower dams on the Kennebec, the one in Waterville. There's 2 in Waterville and 1 at Shawmut. If those dams get taken out, and the Nature Conservancy has agreed to buy the dams from, reportedly agreed to buy the dams from Brookfield Power, that would allow the endangered species Atlantic salmon to get up to the Sandy River in northwest Maine, which is a prime spawning habitat. I hope I live long enough to see that happen. Our affiliate, Free the Andro, which is run by Chip Spees, who used to be on the TU board, is advocating for workable fish passage on the dam between Brunswick and Topsom. The current fish passage doesn't work. They lift a small percentage of the fish that attempt to get over the dam. The rest have to live without spawning. So, how would you like to do that? Maybe a younger audience would get a little bit more of it. We work with Department of Marine Resources on the Little River, which comes into the Andro above the dam. The 17 Atlantic salmon that were put over the dam in Brunswick last year, some of them went up the Little River looking for a place to spawn. They chose it because there's a big spring right where it meets the Andro. It was 55 degrees on a very hot 90 degree day, so that's what draws them in there. We helped the DMR do a survey of the spawning and rearing habitat. There wasn't a lot of it, but there's some, so we're hopeful that will continue. And it may get even better if we can get better fish passage. Now, what's going on in Mere Brook, which is crosses Main Street, not too far away. Tom, is that you?
Me?
Yeah.
My name's Tom.
I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you.
Mere Brook is a urban impaired stream. What does that mean? It means it's in an urban neighborhood. It's been developed from Thornton Oaks all the way down, former Brunswick Naval Air Station. It runs 3/4 of a mile under the runway. How would you like to swim through 3/4 of a mile of darkness to get to your spawning habitat? We are working in an advisory capacity with the Mere Brook Watershed Leadership Committee, suggesting ideas on what we can do to implement the management plan for Mere Brook. And we have started taking temperature monitoring. Been doing that on Frost Gully and on Mere Brook for a number of years. We're going to do a pit tag study, which uses the same technology as the state does on the turnpike. When you go through the toll, they have a receiver that grabs your license plate and your rig that you have on your dashboard. We're going to implant a miniature version of those into the fish. And if they swim through the culvert under the runway, there's going to be receivers on either side like they have in the toll booth. It will tell us whether the fish are getting through the culvert. So that will answer that long-standing question. I just wanted to point out the artwork behind Jeff highlights dragonflies, damselflies, turtles, and frogs. All of those are some of those are macroinvertebrates. Everybody likes to wear jewelry with dragonflies on it. They eat mosquitoes, they eat black flies, and they live in the water. That's where they start. Nate Hicks has some dragonfly nymphs for everyone to look at. They're ugly when they're a nymph, but then they morph like a butterfly and turn into the lovely adults. Pesticides and too much salt in the rivers adversely affects all those creatures. So we're supportive of efforts to see a decrease in the pesticide use and in salt use on the roads. Abby Sewell showed us some statistics. Since 1940, when they started using salt on the road, the amount of salt has gone exponentially up every year. So where does this stop? I know the town of Bodenham was on the finance committee for 20 years. We paid a lot of money for the salt every year, sand and salt mix. A lot of money, thousands of dollars. So there's a financial gain for a town to stop using so much. Before I get the hook, one last thing. Because we did such a good job on the Frost Gully, we're asked to look at a dam removal project in Buckfield, which is up above Lewiston and Turner. It's on the west branch of the Nazinskit River. The dam owner, who lives here in Brunswick, wants to get rid of it because of the liability. It was put in 1790, hasn't done anything for 100 years, and all it's doing is blocking 12.9 miles of the stream, which contains thermal refugia and spawning and rearing habitat for the brook trout that live below the dam. It also will decrease the chance of flooding in the town of Buckfield, which had to get FEMA money a couple of years ago when we had those December and January storms. And also, the dam is leaking because it's 200 plus years old, and it's washing out the former mill building, now residential apartment building. It's washing out the guy's foundation. So all we need is about $500,000. So if anybody is so inclined, see me after, and I'll gladly accept your check. We have raised $28,000 to date. We have pending grant applications, none with the federal government, I should point out, because the Fed isn't in the grant-making business anymore. But we have about $400,000 in grants pending, so we're in the ballpark of getting this done. And again, I hope to live long enough to see it happen. So I think I've run out of time. Jeff, thank you.
Thank you, Gene. Very comprehensive. No, thank you very much. So let's get going here. And let's start with our eye on the prize, the brook trout. It has long been regarded with awe and wonder because of its singular beauty among fishes.
No, that was me. I was just turning you up, sorry.
Okay. This legend I'm about to share with you is attributed to one of the Native Americans back in 1950, something like that. Let me read it to you if you have difficulty reading it. When Manitou visited the land of the Iroquois to lead his lost children back to the happy hunting ground in the Far East, he grew weak with hunger and cold on his long quest. Toward night he stopped beside a pool in Seneca County, which was overshadowed by colossal white pines and hemlocks. Noticing that it was full of handsome trout, as black as ebony, he reached his hand and easily caught the largest of the superb fish. Looking at it, he was struck by its beauty and agile grace and decided to control his hunger and let it live. So he dropped it back into the deep pool. The trout went on its way, but instantly its sides took on a silvery hue where the fingers of the Great Spirit had held it, and all of its kind became marked with the same silvery sheen and many colored dots and halos, as a token of them having been handled by the kindly Manitou. For that reason, the Seneca and others of the Six Nations will not eat a brook trout. Brook trout were sacred to the highest instincts of their race. But what we have spared, the white man has destroyed by the millions. Again, attributed to Jesse Logan, the last of the Shikahemis tribe in Warren County, Pennsylvania, in 1928. Beautiful, beautiful legend, beautiful. And he's not wrong. The brook trout is a beautiful, beautiful fish. Just take a look at this really a marvelous specimen here, and shout out what do you find striking about the appearance of a brook trout? Louder?
Color.
The colors, yes. You have this olive gray, olive background, and then you've got these beautiful yellow spots. You'll see red spots that have a halo, a purple halo around them. Absolutely stunning. What else you see?
White edge fins.
The
White edge fins.
Yes, the white edge fins. Now, you notice it looking closely at that, the leading edge of the fin is white. Immediately in back of that is a stripe of black, and then you've got this beautiful red hue taking the rest of the fin around. Note also on the dorsal fin, the very top there, that's called vermiculation, and that's very unusual as well and highly beautiful. These fish don't live a long life. They can live to about 4 years before they die. But the other thing I want you to notice here is the lack of any obvious scales. Right? If you compare it to something like a striped bass, so it's thought that there are scales. Obviously, it's a fish; it has scales, but they're very small, and it's thought that the smaller the scales, the faster the fish. So that's maybe a broad generalization, but the scales are very, very small, and that lends itself to the overall luster of the fish. I should start, before we go much further, I should clear something up. The name of the brook trout is a misnomer. It's a char, C-H-A-R-R. And the difference lies in a particular bone in the shape, a particular bone in the mouth of the fish called a vomer. It looks like a little boat if you ever look at a trout's mouth. And in a char, the teeth on that vomer are very small, like they're barely there. In a true trout, they are much more noticeable. So, but we're stuck with this name of brook trout in part because the first people who came here from Europe, the Plymouth colonists, took a look at that fish and said, "Oh, that's a trout," and named it a trout. They didn't know trout from char, of course. This was the 1600s. They also labeled the trout by where they found them. So thus we have brook trout, lake trout, even pond trout. So here we are 400 years later, stuck with this with this name that's not all that accurate. But brook trout and char and of course salmon are in the salmonid family, which is marked by the presence of two distinct fins, the adipose in the back between the dorsal and the caudal, and the pelvic fin. The adipose fin has sort of boggled biologists for years. It doesn't seem to serve much of a purpose for the fish. It doesn't keep it upright, doesn't help it swim. You'll see that the other fins are far more structured with these rays. The adipose fin doesn't have any kind of structural ray at all. So it's thought to be kind of a vestigial thing, a little bit like our own appendix. But the other difference between char and trout is that char really seeks out the coldest water it can get. Other trout are a little bit more, it's easier for them to live in a slightly warmer water. They're all cold water species, but trout can take a little bit higher water temperatures. Not so our friends the char. These fish have all evolved from a common ancestor back when the earth was a far, far different place. And it may have been a minute since your last geology class, and I will spare you the details of each one of these epochs here. But we start with the Oligocene, 34 million years ago, and go through the Miocene, the Pliocene, the Pleistocene, and the Holocene, present day. In the Oligocene, our ancestral trout split into Sabalinus, Salmo, and Oncorhynchus. And you can see the lines here about how things went. In Oncorhynchus, later in the Miocene, the other thing I wanted to mention here, aside from this, is imagine the world is getting colder all the time as we move left to right through this chart. So Oligocene, very warm, to the Pleistocene, which is the Ice Age. Okay? So these fish became, evolved into being a rainbow, a cutthroat, and a brown trout from the Oncorhynchus line. And by the way, rainbow and cutthroat and brown trout are the true trouts of the world. And they came from the Oncorhynchus and the Salmo. On the char side of the family, Sabalinus, the first fish to split from that in the Miocene is the Fontinalis, which is the brook trout, and the Namakush, the lake trout. Later on in the Pliocene, we see the bull trout arrive. In the Pleistocene, we get Arctic char and Dolly Varden. Our current epoch, so the Pleistocene was this is what I want to talk about. The Pleistocene is the Ice Age, okay? And the Ice Age was not one continual, hunk of ice. The ice came in great sheets and then retreated, and came again and retreated. And geologists know this by studying the rocks that have survived all these things. So there are several of these ice sheets that came and went through this, 2.6 million years of the Earth's history. And with every advancing and retreating ice sheet, the brook trout had to find that good water for them. So their range was all over the place and very dependent on these advancing and receding ice sheets. Our current epoch here, the Holocene, is the Holocene comes from the Greek holo, meaning whole, right? And scene is the Greek word for new. So you can think of the Holocene meaning entirely new. And the Holocene is a time in Earth's history when we have had the greatest effect on the planet. And this is important for us to understand tonight because we're going to be talking about how we've had this effect on this trout that started its life 20 million years ago. Some people think about the Holocene not being that great a name. It means entirely new. So you may have also heard a term called Anthropocene, which is a little bit more descriptive, talking about how man's presence on this planet and the way we have changed things for our own convenience without any regard for anything else has shaped the planet in irreversible ways. So the people who espouse this Anthropocene term have posed pretty convincing evidence that we are living through and causing the world's 6th extinction. So the present-day distribution of brook trout is largely because of the last ice sheet that we experienced here on Earth, called the Wisconsin ice sheet. It spread all throughout, it spread actually from the Hudson Bay and through a lot of sand and gravel down. And when you go down to Cape Cod and Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard and Long Island, you're walking on the very edge of where the glacial stopped, the moraine. That glacier extended far west as Indiana and Illinois, and of course it went way up into Canada. But also look at how the territory or the distribution of brook trout extends all the way down to South Carolina and Georgia. So even though the glaciers didn't extend all that far down, their effect on the overall climate was huge, and it created this cold water environment in an area right now. It's you kind of scratch your head and say, brook trout in Georgia? So, and it's also something for you to understand here is that it's pretty easy to understand that in the 19th century, before industrialization, that all of this area here was either blue or green, meaning for strong or healthy habitat for the brook trout. Now, what other colors are we seeing here, and where are we seeing them? We see a lot of yellow, which is moderate. We see a lot of brown. We see a boatload of red. But I'd like to point out to you, the gray areas are where the trout used to be, and they are no more. But I'd like to point out to you a piece of good news here. What can you tell me about the state of Maine? There's some green, right? Some yellow, spots of blue. So the state of Maine, and of course this is a US-based map, so this, the brook trout, by the way, extend their territory well into Canada and Newfoundland and Labrador. But this was something that a US-based organization, the Trout Unlimited, put together, so we get a US-based bias on it. But the good news here is that Maine is the last stronghold in the United States for brook trout habitat. And we absolutely must do whatever we can to protect it. So, Maine is great, but not all of Maine is great. Imagine where you might find, a place like Brunswick here. And what those colors are? Orange and red. Meaning we have, at best, a poor habitat. But the good news is we have fish. We have brook trout in Maine. Now, before we get into Mare Brook specifically, I wanted to alert you all, if you have not seen this map, this is a fantastic map put together by a town staff. This is the map of the major watersheds in Brunswick. And just think for yourselves for a little time. I'm going to ask you some questions. Just think for yourselves about where your watershed is. So imagine your house and identify the watershed. How well do you think your watershed works? How does your watershed work? Is there a major stream through it, or is it small tributaries? How does stormwater treated in your watershed before it reaches either McCoy Bay, Middle Bay, the Androscoggin River? What's that water carrying other than rainwater? And where's it going? Okay, enough of that. But this is a great map, and it's online. It's on the Town of Brunswick site, and it's just I thought it was a wonderful eye opener. I personally just love maps generally. But so we talked about how Mare Brook is a Class B urban impaired stream. So we need to unpack that, because it sounds terrible, urban impaired. We're going to find that will become glaringly obvious in a few minutes when we talk about Mare Brook in particular. But I think it's worthwhile to spend a few minutes to talk about how the state of Maine classifies its streams. And there are four basically classifications for streams. There are other classifications for ponds, other classifications for estuarian and estuarial environments as well. Let's stick to our streams. When you think about our water in Maine, there's a lot of good news because all of the water here is better than the water the worst water you find in the Clean Water Act. Okay, so it's drinkable, it's fishable, it's swimmable, all of the water. Okay, this is a blessing, so let's not lose sight of that. So what happens here with these water classifications, it's not a matter of how you can use it, it's a matter of where the tipping point is before things get terrible, before the system collapses. So in AA water, activities such as waste, discharge, impoundment, completely prohibited, done. So think about some of the rivers in the north that run freely and have been running freely for years and years and years because it's out in the Great North Woods. Those are Class A waters. When you get into A class waters, those impoundments with very restricted discharges are allowed. Mare Brook here is a Class B water, fewer restrictions on activity, but still needs to maintain high water criteria. And C is the worst, but least restrictions on use and lowest, but not low water criteria. Again, the point here is that this is an area of, this whole classification is about how close to the tipping point you can get before the system collapses. A large body of water, Brunswick, for instance, I was swimming in last week and using soap. And I thought, this is a huge body of water, largely untouched, and the impact of my soap bubbles will be quickly absorbed and taken and without so much as a shrug on Brunswick part. Not so much with these other areas here. Okay, let's go on. Let's get into this Class B classification a little bit better here. And I won't have you read this entire thing. Let me just point out to you the highlights here. The habitat must be characterized as unimpaired. Okay? Mare Brook is an urban impaired stream. It's still classified as Class B, but it's not making the grade. Okay? Class B waters must be of sufficient quality to support all aquatic species that are indigenous to that piece of water. And you can't put anything in there that's going to have any adverse effect in them. So here's Mare Brook. This is another map that was taken from the Mare Brook Watershed Management Plan, also available on the town's website. And you can see what the planners have done here is they've segregated Mare Brook into 6 major sections here so that each section can be better managed and remedies can be found that are specific to that particular section here. So starting where Crystal Springs Farm is, that area is called above Barrowwood Drive. Then in red, you've got above Main Street, above Harpswell Road, the big green area there, pretty much the heart of the town. And then below Harpswell Road, and then American Stream in purple, and the other green color there is called Runway to Head of Tide in Harpswell Cove. In the bubbles here, you can see the problems that are impairing Mare Brook. Dissolved oxygen, meaning that there's not a lot of it. The velocity is too high, and high velocity in the stream scours the substrate of the stream. It doesn't make for anything that near a good habitat for a brook trout. The physical habitat is changed by man. There's toxicity, temperature issues, and that's basically it. You'll see in green here, there's one called low recruitment. And low recruitment means when the state comes in and tries to boost the macroinvertebrate population by introducing new bugs, that the system can't support that. There's a low recruitment for them, so that bugs don't live. That tells you something. Okay. Here's a chart basically of the same information that I just showed you. But you can see that Mare Brook, from the moment it comes out of the ground, is assaulted from agricultural runoff. They've removed the floodplain, so when, in the case of a rainstorm, the stream cannot flood. And believe me, a stream wants to flood, and it's very good for the entire water table, and it cools the water when it's able to flood because the waters settle back down into the aquifer, through the soil to the aquifer, and they actually then become cooler, and the whole idea then cools the water. Many, I think 7, am I right, Gene, undersized culverts, and an undersized culvert is a bit like when you take your thumb over a water hose. You're building up pressure on the upstream side, and you're releasing that pressure at the end of the hose, and you're spraying your mom. Then that scours the downstream side, and it collects water on the upstream side in a very unnatural way, and that water warms unnaturally. So there's a bunch. Just takeaway here is there's a bunch of things, a bunch of stressors to Mare Brook, and each one of these stressors compounds with things like our pesticide use to stress out our trout. But here's the good news. First of all, we've got brook trout in Brunswick. That's fantastic and very rare. The second piece of news, and this was a survey that was done by DIF&W in 2018, and they took samples on Harpswell Road, 123 crossing, and again at Main Street. And what they found was absolutely fantastic. These are not large populations, okay? But you've got, at the 123 crossing, 6 brookies of legal size. And by the way, that's a foot long. Sublegal size. And most striking was what we see on the screen here is YOY, which means young of the year. And this was very key to understand that this is now a self-sustaining population of brookies in a very urban impaired environment. It's amazing, it's wonderful, we should celebrate it, but we should do everything we can to help them grow and live. So 20 young of the year at the 123 crossing, 25 at Main Street crossing. It was wonderful. So, we've seen some examples here about what it means to be an urban impaired stream. This is the Holocene and the Anthropocene in action. Okay, we've straightened the stream. Okay, and we've removed any leafy covers for it. So when you think about what a brook trout needs to survive, how well is Mare Brook doing, and what could it use more of? That's a question. Cover, absolutely shelter. They need cover from predators, so they're safe from predators. Anything else?
Bugs.
Hold that thought. Yeah?
Less road salt, less runoff, less leaky septic systems, less pesticides.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Everything that we create, all the waste we create is a threat to them. Be it road salt, motor oil, even there's a chemical within our tires, by the way, that is also toxic to our fish. Yeah, all that. So we have, they need a cold water environment and a water environment that has a lot of dissolved oxygen in it as well. They also need a great gravel substrate. Why do they need a great gravel substrate? Spawning. For spawning, exactly right, exactly right. So when you have the downsides on the edge of the culvert, that has been stripped of all gravel. That area right there, not a great place for your little nursery, okay? So this is all these things that we do without a thought to make our own lives more convenient is really having a detrimental effect on our trout. But yes, to your point, bugs, and the more the better. So let's talk a bit about the critical role of aquatic insects. The life cycles of aquatic insects differ according to species, and there's a lot of different kinds of aquatic animals. We're going to be talking about only 3 of them tonight. but they all share the same general kind of life cycle. Eggs are deposited by the female into the water. Those eggs find a place to live and hatch, and then the emerging insect is going to be a pupil or a larvae. It's going to come into a nymph stage, and is going to spend most of its time underwater, most of its lifespan underwater, living and just and growing until it becomes an adult, and then it's going to shed its nymphal stage, its shuck, and it's going to either climb out on the bank or rise to the surface of the water and fly away with newfound wings. Anyway, at that point, it's a very short period of time for their overall life cycle. They will then mate, and the eggs will form, and the cycle of life continues. So, aquatic insects have diverse diets. Some are herbivores. They eat algae, decaying leaves, and other plant matter. So again, if we're scrubbing the bottom of Mare Brook through the fire hose of small culverts, that's just that much less debris available to these insects to eat. Some of them are predators, and they consume other insects or small crustaceans, some fish eggs. And then there are scavengers who feed on dead organisms and organic debris. But as I said, we're going to just cover 3 of them tonight, and then we're going to break and take a look at the insects in real life in the back of the room here. So let's get into it. Let's start off, because I created this presentation, I get to start off with my favorite insect, which is the caddisfly. The caddisfly is an amazing, amazing insect. So you see on all these pages, you'll see the nymphal stage and the adult stage, okay, left to right, okay? So caddisflies are amazing to me because they create homes for themselves. Most of them do. And this particular one, the folk name for this one is a log cabin caddisfly. And you can see why. So they will take from their environment and they will build up themselves a home, this particular kind of caddisfly. And they'll take like hemlock leaves, they'll take sand, and they'll build themselves a web of a home. And that home is their protection from predators. And they'll come out and they'll eat, and they'll go back in. And they will spend many years of their lives doing this. There are 2 other kinds of caddisflies. One's called a free-swimming caddisfly, which is, just as the name suggests, it doesn't build a house for itself, but it lives out pretty much in the open, and it chases down predators, and it also can swim very well and hide itself and burrow under rocks from predators. The next one is called the net-spinning caddisfly, and that one is another phenomenal architect. They will create a web. Think of a cornucopia, okay? And they're going to tuck themselves in a small funnel of that cornucopia and sit and watch life's banquet come right to them. And when a good piece of morsel falls into their net, they will swim out, grab it, eat it, and then retreat back into the small part of that cornucopia spinning net. They're just amazing to me. Very briefly here, the stoneflies, moving on, I want to move on. The stoneflies are huge. They're unbelievably big for what they're in comparison to other aquatic insects. And they too have different diets depending upon their life stage. Larval stoneflies can be herbivores or detritivores, meaning they eat detritus. They feed on algae, decaying vegetation, other organic matter. Some of them, when they mature, will eat just about anything, and they prey on other aquatic invertebrates. When they become an adult, and this is pretty much common with all aquatic insects, they're there for one purpose as an adult, and it's not food. And we'll see this also, some adult mayflies will eat, but for the most part, stoneflies will eat, but that's not what it's all about. So they may have mouth parts that they just don't use. The most lovely of all of the aquatic insects we're going to cover tonight is the mayfly. I'm sure many of you have seen mayflies in the water as adults, but they are absolutely stunning. Not so much in their nymphal state. They can look pretty ugly in their nymphal state, but when they hatch and come up into the water, they will actually swim up to the surface of the water, spend a great deal of energy bursting through that film at the top of the water. Okay, and when they're doing so, they are very, very vulnerable to anything out there that could eat them. They will expend a lot of energy breaking through that film, and once they get through that film, they will release themselves from their shuck. And on the right-hand side of this is what you're seeing here. This picture was taken by Nate Hicks this spring on Pierce Pond, where I may just say, parenthetically, I had a fantastic day. You see on the left here, the shuck. That moments before this picture was taken, that animal was in that shuck. Now we're seeing the adult here, and this is actually called the dun stage. I don't want to get too technical on you, but at this point he's fresh. He's going to be a fresh adult. And he's going to use this time right here. You can see his wings poking up there like a lateen rig on a sailboat, and they're kind of dark. He's going to spend the next several moments with pumping what is insect blood through those wings so that he can fly. Comment, Gene.
How many big fish did you catch that day, John?
Let me catch up with you later. Okay. So these are the three major insects that we're going to have that comprise the fish's diet. Now, it's time to have a little fun here and talk about how the aquatic insects are the canaries in the coal mine to indicate the stream health. And we're going to have a period of time here. What time is it right now? 7 o'clock? Okay, we will have 15 minutes to do this next exercise. And so what we're going to do is, like, this side of the room, I want you to go back to the bins on the left, and this side of the room to the bins on the right. Don't jump up yet. There's more information you need to know. We've sampled aquatic insects from 2 local streams. On the left is Brunswick's Mare Brook, urban impaired Class B stream. And on the right, we have sampled from Frost Gully Brook, which has been recently rehabilitated through the removal of the 3 dams that Gene told you about. So Mare Brook, culverts, dams, heated water, not a great environment. Frost Gully Brook, no more dams, sizable culverts, runs free from the headwaters all the way down to the Harrisseaket Bay.
Consistently cold.
That's all I'm going to say. But what I would like you to do is, with the help of Gene and Nate, and Jane, if you could also help, we want you to use this guide. It's called the Maine Audubon Stream Explorer's Guide, and there's a key in it that will become immediately evident to you about how to use it. You take a look at a bug, and you say, does it have legs? Are legs segmented, yes or no? And then, so if you follow a path, long enough, you're going to get to understand what insect that is. And then on that same, where you come to that conclusion, it will refer you to another page within the key where you're going to be able to understand how susceptible that insect is to pollution. Some insects can withstand a great deal of pollution, and you will find them in great streams and in poor streams. Other insects are only going to be able to survive really well in great streams. So take 15 minutes here. I will whistle at 7 for you guys to switch sides and see what's going on. But please get up, move around, and have an idea about what these bugs are all about. All right, I'm sorry that you didn't have a lot of time for that exercise. Hopefully you were able to draw at least some modest conclusions from what you saw. Hazel, if you could be ready with the microphone. Can anyone give us their impression of the difference between the insects you saw in Mare Brook and the insects you saw in Frost Gully? Just raise your hand.
definitely a lot more life in Frost Gully, a lot more diversity and
So, yeah, greater biodiversity in Frost Gully. And that, by the way, Frost Gully, before the dams came down, was pretty bad off with the you know, because of the dams. We've seen in just the 3 years that the dams have been down, an explosion of life, and particularly when it comes to mayfly larvae and nymphs, where they require some pretty clean, cold water to live. It's been very exciting for us. So greater biodiversity. How about the insect's ability to withstand pollution? Did anyone get that far? Oops.
Hands behind your back.
Okay, don't feel like you're on the hook. Let me spare you. Yeah, so generally, you're looking at 2 samples that were taken just this morning, and a stream, even with its length of it, and Mare Brook is like a 5-mile stream. You will find some pretty barren areas and some pretty bad areas. Where Gina and I sampled this morning was right by thank you, the Coffin Ice Pond, and in a very cold, riffly area, so lots of oxygen in that area and great temperatures. So we got a lot of pretty good insects. Up in back of the junior high school, it's like a desert. I'm seeing, when I sample in back of the junior high school, I'm seeing more worms, I'm seeing less caddis. So just by and large, the biodiversity and the population itself is not as robust, and certainly is more prone to have those insects that are more tolerant to pollution in Mare Brook than Frost Gully. So, just one more thing I want to cover before we open it up for the conversation. We talked earlier about all the stressors that the brook trout in Mare Brook face, and one of those is pesticide use. I want to just take a moment here and educate us all about how pesticides actually work. I found this short video. I found it. It's very, very, very good about telling you exactly what happens when a pesticide hits an insect's body.
Cockroaches are more than just a nuisance pest. They are dangerous to live with since they act as vectors for disease. We often joke about the fact that a cockroach could survive a nuclear blast, but they're no match for a small spray of insecticide. Have you ever wondered how insecticides affect cockroaches? Let's find out. Meet Joey the cockroach. He's luckier than many other insects, as he's been granted his very own suit of armor, an exoskeleton. He's very proud of it, but just like any other armor, it can't offer perfect protection. Although it can help him withstand more force and survive longer, it doesn't protect him from the instant death that comes from exposure to insecticide. Small pores and spiracles allow some of the harmful material to enter his system. For the insecticide, entering Joey's system is just the beginning. It has the potential to kill him in an instant, thanks to lethal compounds like pyrethrins and pyrethoids. To understand why these compounds are toxic to Joey, you need to understand how neurons normally function. Suppose Joey's brain asks his legs to start scurrying around in order to freak out some humans. This message would travel as an impulse of positive ions from his brain to the legs via axons in the many neurons along the path. As the ions move through the axons, their charge gradually weakens, and this is not good because this means the message from the brain won't reach Joey's legs. If the message never arrives, he can't scurry around. To overcome this problem, there are voltage-gated sodium channels along the membrane that can allow positive ions or sodium ions to enter and maintain the strength of the impulse. Since they are voltage-gated, they open like doors in the presence of ions around them. In this case, when a weakened impulse reaches such a channel, they are triggered to open, allowing positive ions to enter and subsequently increase the impulse strength back to its original condition. This allows the impulse to maintain strength until it reaches its intended destination. That's how it normally should function. But when exposed to an insecticide after it breaches the imperfect armor, the harmful compounds will disrupt this critical system. What exactly do these compounds mess with? The doors. These compounds prevent the sodium channels from closing. They keep the doors open. which means the sodium ions keep entering through the membrane and it becomes depolarized. Since the axon is depolarized, the nerve impulses cannot propagate, and hence the brain cannot tell the rest of the body to do anything. Joey will become paralyzed and await death, likely by starvation. Congratulations! You now know how insecticides work. And as for poor Joey, well, he will be missed.
But you get the general idea. The sodium ions become overloaded with the insecticide and cause paralysis in the insect, and the insect will starve to death. And it will do so to every insect it comes across. Back to Rachel Carlson's famous quote here. Few on one species by a method that contaminated the entire environment and brought threat and disease to their own kind. So with that, let's have a brief discussion if we can. Time is just about out. But I would like to have a little discussion about what alternatives we can be thinking about rather than using commercial pesticides to control the little critters in our gardens and in our lawns. I'll start. We have a lovely lily plant in our yard. It's done right now, it's bloomed, but back in July, it was absolutely fantastic, and we loved it, and so did the Japanese beetles. And so rather than spray an insecticide on the plants, we decided instead to get a little bucket of soapy water and go over to the flowers that had the beetles on them and tap the flower. The beetles fall off right into the soapy water. Period, end of story. We also are graced with slugs in our garden, and we lay out little trays of cheap beer for them. And that just dissuades them from going to the plant, because I guess they're more turned on by the idea of cheap beer. So they will then drown in the beer. So we find this to be a far better way of managing the few pests that we have in our garden. My neighbor across the road hasn't put any herbicide or insecticide on her lawn for about 30 years now. And it's not a great lawn. It's never going to be in a Scott's commercial, but it's suitable, and she gets migrating birds come in and eat the insects as they're coming out of the ground, and so she's doing her part. What other ideas do you have? What practices do you guys use that might be considered alternative ways of controlling insects?
Ducks or chickens?
Jane,
Killing
hold
weeds
on a
with
second.
vinegar.
We need a microphone on you.
Using vinegar to kill weeds instead of Roundup.
Using vinegar rather than Roundup. How do you apply the vinegar?
The vinegar is not what you would buy at Hannaford, which is like a 5% acidic. It's more like 30% acidic. You get it at Home Depot or a garden center, and you cut it with water and put it in a pump
sprayer?
and you just spray it on your bricks that have weeds growing up between and it kills them 24 hours.
Awesome. I still have 2 jugs of Roundup. They've gone through 2 moves. I don't know how to get rid of them, and I can't get rid of them.
The state has a pesticide, I forget, if anyone wants the notice, you can send me an email. I have my cards up front, but the state is doing a collection. You do have to register for it, but they do, I don't know if it's annual or biannual collections of materials like that, other hazardous waste. So there are ways to do so. Hopefully we can figure out more frequent ways to collect them, but that's currently all I know so far.
Excellent. Over here. One last one here.
I think we've all been fed a story by the chemical companies that we're supposed to have these perfect lawns. And so I think a lot of it has to do with changing our paradigm. Just as this young woman said, dandelions are not weeds, they are plants, and there are a lot of benefits to the dandelions. And instead of mowing the field and cutting down the goldenrod and the Queen Anne's lace, leaving it up because we know that the goldenrod is one of the last nectar pollen plants that the bees have before frost. So there are all kinds of ways that we can think about focusing on building healthy soil and taking a more biodynamic approach that embraces nature as it is rather than fighting against it and trying to control it, but trying to learn from it instead and work with it. And realizing that the lawn is a monoculture that doesn't do any good for any of us, and that we should all, it's as simple as planting flowers. That's all we have to do. If we all planted flowers, we would be doing so much for all of the insects.
Thank you. Ed, you're the last.
I do a lot of writing on the natural world, and a couple years ago I did an article on the alternatives to having beautiful lawns, going natural, no mow May, as they celebrate in a lot of areas now, pollinator gardens, that kind of thing. I was stunned to learn that we have more acreage nationwide in lawn than we do in agricultural crops. Think about that. And if each of us just let 10% of our lawn go wild, on a national scale, it would have a dramatic impact on the number of insects, the number of birds that eat those insects, the use of pesticides, gasoline in your lawnmower, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't take a massive shift in behavior if we all realize what we're doing and make those subtle changes.
Thank you. Thank you.
I've been mowing my lawn in Nottingham for 30 some odd years, and the only thing I've ever put on it was a little bit of lime from time to time to change the pH, and it seems to like that. Jane says it looks like a golf course, so I must be doing something right.
All right, thank you very much. Let's see, okay, one more. This is your really last one.
I just wanted to say one thing, is because I'm from Oklahoma, and whenever I go back and visit my family, seeing everyone watering, the one thing that drives me crazy is why we use fresh drinking water to water a lawn. Drives me crazy.
Thank you for all those comments. Thank you very much, very enlightening. So, one last plug for Trout Unlimited. This QR code will take you to the site on a national basis, national site for you to join Trout Unlimited. As a new member to Trout Unlimited, your annual fee will be a walloping $15, followed by the second year of $35. So very reasonable to expect, and very reasonable to join. And when you're joining, you're supporting a lot of great conservation work, and actually joining also a community of like-minded fellows in your own hometown. We have a regular meeting set up from September through May, the third Tuesday of every month at the Sea Dog Restaurant. We always have a decent speaker, either talking about conservation issues or, yes, fishing practices and things like that nature. But you're always welcome to join us. We won't hit you up to become a member. Just come in and get to know us. We'd love to have you all. So, on behalf of our resident brook trout population, I'd like to thank you for your attendance and your attention tonight. I applaud you. Thank you.